My name is Lin Yi, and I transmigrated. That's not the main point. The key point is that I have transmigrated into an urban fantasy novel as the main villain who opposes the protagonist, only to end up with his family ruined and himself dead without a complete corpse. The villain is also named Lin Yi, a stereotypical rich second generation. His sole purpose in existence is to constantly use his not-so-high intelligence to provoke the protagonist, only to be repeatedly and stylishly slapped down by the protagonist, ultimately becoming a stepping stone on the protagonist's path to success, and a particularly annoying one at that. I opened my eyes and looked at the six-figure crystal chandelier on the ceiling. The memories of this book played out in my mind like a movie on autoplay. I saw how I became enemies with a protagonist over a woman, how I used my family's connections to suppress him, only to be counterattacked, leading to the company's bankruptcy, my father dying of anger, and myself having my legs broken by the protagonist before being thrown into the river to feed the fish. A complete standard procedure. Exceptionally smooth. I sighed and sat up from the bed. Fine. Since I've already transmigrated, I might as well face it. I was a corporate slave in my past life anyway. Dying at my desk, not much difference. My life philosophy is to avoid overthinking. But just as I was about to get out of bed, grab a good meal, and enjoy the last bit of luxury as a rich second-generation heir, a cold, emotionless mechanical voice rang out directly in my mind. Ding. Detected stable host soul. The villain system is now officially activated. I was stunned. This system is dedicated to assisting the host in becoming the strongest villain in history, defeating the protagonist, and reaching the pinnacle of life. Newbie mission released. Within 30 minutes. Go to the living room downstairs and deliberately knock over the pre-rain dragon while tea that the protagonist, Chu Fan, has carefully prepared for your father. Mission success. Reward a newbie gift pack. Mission failure. Immediate elimination. I sat on the edge of the bed, motionless, feeling the blood in my body turn ice cold. Eliminate? I wasn't dreaming. The voice in my head was as real as if someone were whispering in my ear. Moreover, I could clearly sense a cold, indescribable energy, like a venomous snake coiled around my heart. It was telling me it wasn't joking. I glanced down at the Patek Philippe on my wrist. The minute hand gave a soft click as it moved. 29 minutes left. I remember the plot of this book. Today is the first time the protagonist, Chu Fan, visits our home. Chu Fan's father used to be my father's driver and died saving him. Chu Fan is somewhat like the son of an old acquaintance. Today, after graduating from university, he specially brought the finest tea from his hometown to visit my father. In the original book, the villain Lin, driven by jealousy over his father's admiration for Chu Fan, deliberately knocked over that cup of tea, setting off his long and foolish path to self-destruction. The system is forcing me to follow the storyline. If I don't go, I'll die. If I go, it'll be the start of offending the protagonist. And in the end, I'll still die. It's a vicious cycle. I sat by the bed, my mind racing. Rebel against the system? How the hell am I supposed to do that? Reason with it. It's just a mechanical voice. What the hell does it know about reason? What should we do? Time ticked by, second by second. I could feel the poisonous snake coiled tighter and tighter around my heart. A shadow of death, like a dark cloud, loomed over me. I am no hero. I am just an ordinary person who wants to live. I took a deep breath and stood up. It's just a cup of tea. Isn't it? I'll take it. I quickly changed my clothes and tidied myself up. The young man in the mirror looked decent enough, but unfortunately, his brain wasn't quite up to par. I said to my reflection, "Brother, sorry about this, but I have to stay alive first." I walked downstairs. In the living room, my father was deep in conversation with a young man. The young man stood tall and straight, with a resolute look in his eyes that seemed beyond his years. He was Chu Fan, the chosen one of this book. When my father saw me, he waved and said, "Lin Yi, you're down. Come here. This is your Uncle Chu's son, Chu Fan." Chu Fan stood up and gave me a polite smile. Brother Lin Yi. Hello. My father pointed at the steaming cup of tea on the table and said with a smile, Xiao Fan is so thoughtful. He knows I love tea and specially brought me such fine pre-rain Longjing. I looked at that cup of tea. That was my mission target. I walked over, forcing a smug and arrogant smile onto my face. The kind of rich second-generation heir should have. Dad, what kind of crappy tea is this that makes you so happy? I said. My father's face darkened. How are you talking? Chu Fan's brow also furrowed slightly. Here it comes. The plot is about to unfold. I reached out my hand, and under the watchful eyes of my father and Chu Fan, I deliberately let it slip, precisely knocking over that teacup. Smack! The scalding tea spilled all over the floor, and the precious purple clay cup shattered into pieces. The air in the living room instantly froze. My father stood up in fury, pointing at me, his hand trembling. You ungrateful child. Chu Fan's gaze also turned cold. Ding. Novice mission completed. The novice gift pack reward has been delivered to the system space. Please check it. Host. Main quest activated. In my mind, the system's notification sound rang out. The threat of death that had been pressing on my heart also vanished. I survived, but I knew this was only the beginning. Next, the system would issue even more outrageous tasks, and I would gradually offend Chu Fan and his friends and family, step by step, until he finally killed me. No, I couldn't just sit back and wait for it to happen. I looked at my furious father, then at Chu Fan's icy gaze, and made a decision that even the system might not understand. I didn't continue to taunt, nor did I run away. I turned around and bolted. Where are you going? My father shouted from behind. I rushed out of the villa gate without looking back, jumped into my sports car, and floored the accelerator. The sports car roared loudly and shot forward. My father and Chu Fan both thought I was fleeing out of guilt, but they were both wrong. My goal was very clear. I opened the navigation and typed in 3 words. Police station. 10 minutes later, amid the stunned gazes of passers-by, a Lamborghini sports car, in a posture that could only be described as suicidal, executed a drift and came to a halt sideways at the main entrance of the city's public security bureau. I pushed open the car door, scrambled inside, rushed to the nearest window, grabbed the duty officer's hand, and burst into tears. Officer, I want to turn myself in. I want to report a crime. The duty officer looked at my designer clothes, then at the flashy sports car at the door, and froze. What crime are you reporting? I took a deep breath, mustered all my strength, and roared out that earth-shattering sentence. There's something in my head. It's forcing me to commit crimes. Are you going to do something about it or not? In the police station lobby, everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at me in unison. Their looks were as if they were staring at a fool who had just escaped from a mental hospital. I was gripping the duty police officer's arm tightly, terrified that he might think I was crazy and kick me out. Comrade, I swear everything I'm saying is true. Absolutely true. I was on the verge of tears. My name is Lin Yi. Just now, 10 minutes ago, I deliberately broke one of my dad's very expensive teacups and even scalded our guest. I've committed a crime. Please arrest me. The duty officer was a young man in his 20s, probably dealing with a situation like this for the first time. As he tried to free himself from my grip, he spoke in a tone like he was coaxing a child. Sir, calm down. Just calm down. So you broke a teacup? That's not a crime. Just apologize to your dad and buy a new cup. Right? No. I shouted. This isn't just an ordinary teacup. This is the beginning of a crime. That thing in my head, it's called the villain system. And it forced me to do it. It said if I didn't, it would kill me. You have to do something. Big villain system. The young man repeated, the corner of his mouth twitching. He turned to an older police officer beside him and said, Captain Zhang, what do we do? The older police officer, referred to as Captain Zhang, walked over. He looked to be in his 40s, with a face full of wrinkles, but his eyes were exceptionally sharp, like an eagle's. He gave me a thorough once-over, from my branded clothes to the watch on my wrist, finally settling his gaze on my face. Flushed red with agitation. "You're saying there's something in your head?" he asked, his voice steady and calm. "Yes." I saw a glimmer of hope and nodded frantically. "A system, just like the ones in novels. It gives me missions, all of them bad things, like bullying someone named Chu Fan. If I don't do them, it says it will erase me." Captain Zhang remained silent, just looking at me quietly. His gaze made me feel like a clown without clothes. After a full half-minute, he slowly spoke. "Shall we take him to the interrogation room, pour him a glass of water, and let him calm down? Also, check his identity information to see if he has any history of mental illness or drug use." I was taken into a small room. The room was small, with just a table and a few chairs. On the wall hung 8 large characters: leniency for confession, severity for resistance. As soon as I entered, I obediently sat down on the chair specifically for prisoners. A female police officer poured me a glass of water. I took it and drank it all in one go. "Thank you." The female officer glanced at me, said nothing, and walked out. The door was closed. I sat alone inside, my heart in turmoil. I knew it, this whole thing sounded too absurd. Not just to them. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't believe it either. But I had no choice. A lone individual fighting against the system, that's something only a novel's protagonist would do. I'm no protagonist. I'm just an ordinary person trying to survive, faced with this inexplicable, life-threatening thing that science can't explain. The most reliable solution I can think of is to turn to the state. Only the state has the capability to deal with this. Just as my mind was wandering, the system in my head chimed in again. Ding. Detected that the host's behavior has seriously deviated from the villain persona. First warning. System tasks are mandatory. Please adopt a proper attitude and actively complete the tasks. Do not attempt to challenge the system's limits. New task issued. Within 1 hour. Leave your current environment and, using your father's company name, send a fake bid-winning notice to the Qingyun construction company where Chu Fan works, giving them false hope. Task success. Reward. Business skills, beginner. Task failure. Termination. Damn it. Here we go again. I looked around. This was an interrogation room. I was under police surveillance. How could I leave? How was I supposed to send that damn notice? Wasn't this just asking for my life? I was so anxious that I couldn't sit still in my chair. The poisonous snake around my heart began to tighten again. The threat of death loomed over me once more. No, I have to find a way. I suddenly stood up, rushed to the door, and pounded on it with all my strength. Open up, open up. I need to see your leader. I have an important report to make. It's urgent. The door opened, revealing Captain Zhang's face, etched with stories. What now? I pointed at my head and spoke rapidly. It gave me another mission. It wants me to get out of here within an hour and send a fake bid-winning notice to my dad's company's rival. It said if I don't, it'll kill me. Captain Zhang, you have to believe me. This is an opportunity. Captain Zhang frowned at me. What opportunity? An opportunity to prove I'm not lying. I said excitedly. You don't believe me, do you? I'm right here under your noses now. Watch me. Don't let me go anywhere. Wait an hour and see if I die. If I don't die, then I'm just crazy, and you can send me to the hospital. But if something really happens to me, then it proves everything I said is true. This thing, it really exists. I was gambling. I bet this system's so-called elimination will produce observable physical phenomena. Captain Zhang stared into my eyes for a long, long time. I could see doubt, scrutiny, and even a hint of an old detective's intuition for anomalies in his gaze. Finally, he nodded. All right, he said. I'll wait with you for an hour. The clock in the interrogation room ticked away. second by second. Captain Zhang sat right across from me. He didn't speak, nor did he ask me any questions. He just quietly watched me. His gaze was calm, but I felt that he was actually observing, making a judgment. My palms were completely sweaty. I don't know what the system means by erasure. Is it a sudden cardiac arrest? An explosion on the spot? Or, like in a sci-fi movie, simply vanishing into thin air? Whichever it is, I'm going to die. In my entire life, I've never felt death so close to me as I do now. There are only 10 minutes left. I began to have difficulty breathing, and the tightening sensation in my chest grew stronger, as if an invisible hand was squeezing my heart with force. My face must have looked terrible, because I saw Captain Zhang's brow furrow even more tightly. He picked up the walkie-talkie and muttered a few words, seemingly instructing someone outside to prepare emergency medical equipment. It seemed he was starting to believe me. Or perhaps, out of a police officer's sense of duty, he simply didn't want me to die in his interrogation room. 1 minute left. My vision began to blur, and my ears were ringing. I could hear my own heartbeat, fast and heavy, as if it were about to leap out of my throat. The viper had already tightened to its limit. I knew I was going to die. I forced out a smile at Captain Zhang that was uglier than crying. Captain Zhang, I said with difficulty, if I die, remember to give me some credit. I'm sacrificing myself for science. Captain Zhang ignored my ramblings. He stood up, walked over to me, and placed a hand on my shoulder. His hand was steady and firm. Hold on, he said. 10 seconds left. 9, 8, 7. I closed my eyes, ready to embrace death. However, just as the countdown was about to hit 0, the system in my mind suddenly let out a piercing alarm. Warning! Warning! Detected that the host's vital signs are about to fall below the critical threshold. Due to force majeure, the mission has failed. System ruling. Mission exempted. Termination procedure. Aborted. I snapped my eyes open, gasping for air in heavy breaths. The force pressing on my heart receded like a tide. I survived. I was drenched in cold sweat, my entire body as if pulled straight out of water. Slumped in the chair, unable to move a single muscle. Captain Zhang was stunned too. Although he couldn't see the system, he could see the change in my condition. One moment I was on the verge of death. The next I was back to normal. This kind of thing simply couldn't be explained by science. You're okay? He asked. I nodded weakly. The system said that due to force majeure, the mission was exempted. I said, force majeure? Captain Zhang repeated the phrase, his gaze turning incredibly sharp. When it says force majeure, does it mean us? I nodded again. Captain Zhang said nothing more. He turned and walked out of the interrogation room. After about half an hour, he returned. Following him inside were 2 people in white coats who looked like researchers. The older one pushed up his glasses and looked at me as if I were a rare animal. Comrade Lin Yi, right? He began, his tone very polite. My surname is Li, and I'm from the Municipal Academy of Sciences. We are very interested in this system you mentioned. A huge weight was finally lifted off my mind. I knew they believed me. The state had finally stepped in. Next, things developed far beyond my imagination. I was taken out of the police station and put into a black car with no visible brand. The car drove into a heavily guarded underground base that couldn't be found on any map. I became Special Research Project 0, codename Villain. My task was to cooperate with Professor Li and his team in studying the supervillain system inside my head. They gave me a full-body examination, scanning me from head to toe. Various instruments I had never seen before swept over my body. The conclusion was, my body was perfectly normal, with no traces of any implanted foreign objects. That system seemed to exist in a higher dimension, directly affecting my consciousness. Professor Li stared at the examination report, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Incredible. This completely overturns our current understanding of physics. something that exists only at the level of consciousness, yet can have a lethal impact on the physical world. I lay on the experimental bed, speaking weakly, professorally. It doesn't matter whether it overturns physics or not. What matters is that it will still assign me tasks, and if I don't complete them, I'll still die. Don't worry, Comrade Lin Yi. Professor Lee patted me on the shoulder. No, you're not fighting alone. Behind you is the entire nation. We will set up a dedicated task force to monitor and analyze the system in your brain 24/7. For every task it gives you, we will conduct a risk assessment and develop the safest and most reasonable execution plan for you. Hearing this, I suddenly felt at ease. Back when I read novels, protagonists who obtained a system always kept it hidden, afraid of being discovered. On the other hand, simply handed the system over directly. No, I feel like I'm not the only one working for the system. I'm leading the country and milking the system for all it's worth. This feeling is damn exhilarating. I moved into a home. This home is a special suite located deep within an underground base. The decor is minimalist, but all the furniture is top-notch, and there is a huge study and gym. The only downside is that there are no windows. My identity has also shifted from suspect to specially appointed consultant and sole research subject. My daily life follows a strict routine. In the morning, I assist the research team with various tests. They use different instruments to monitor my brainwaves under different emotional states, attempting to trace traces of system energy. In the afternoon, it's cultural lessons. A group of experts from various fields take turns giving me lessons. The content is diverse, covering psychology, sociology, law, and even acting classes. As the head of the countermeasure team, Captain Zhang put it, we not only need to study the system, but also study you. We must ensure that during your mission, your psychological state is healthy and your behavior is controllable. At the same time, we need to equip you with the necessary skills to better complete the mission. I understand what he means. It's about making me a licensed villain. That afternoon, I was in an acting class. The teacher was a national first-class stage actor, teaching me how to convey a person's arrogance and disdain through subtle expressions and eye movements. Comrade Lin Yi, you must remember, arrogance is not about wildly contorting your face or shouting loudly. It's a posture, a contempt for everyone that emanates from the very core of your being. Your gaze should be downward, looking at people from the corner of your eye, with a hint of sneer on your lips, 3 parts mockery, 7 parts coldness. I studied with great seriousness, because I knew that these skills would soon come in handy. Sure enough, as soon as the teacher left, the system in his mind chimed. Ding. Main quest released. Tonight at 8 p.m. at the charity banquet in the Golden Pavilion Hotel. Publicly humiliate the protagonist Chu Fan and make him lose face. Quest requirements. Attract the attention of at least half of the guests present, and make Chu Fan develop a strong hatred toward you. Quest success. Reward combat skill. Basic. Task failed. Termination. Upon hearing the task details, my first reaction wasn't panic. I pressed a red button by my bedside. Within 30 seconds, Captain Zhang and Professor Lee rushed in with a crowd of people. Each of them held a tablet, their expressions stern, as if preparing for battle. A task has arrived? Captain Zhang asked. I nodded and repeated the task content. A young woman in professional attire immediately began typing on the keyboard. Soon, all the information about tonight's charity gala appeared on the large screen, including the guest list, seating arrangements, security details, and even the menu. Report. She said, Chu Fan will attend tonight as a representative of Xingyun Construction. This is his first time participating in such a high-level social event. Professor Lee adjusted his glasses, stroked his chin, and said, public humiliation, to make him feel resentment. This task is highly subjective. How do we define the degree of humiliation? How do we quantify the intensity of resentment? Has the system provided any specific evaluation criteria? I shook my head. No, It's always been this vague. This is troublesome. A psychology expert said, if our actions don't reach the system's humiliation threshold, will the task be deemed a failure? The entire conference room fell into silence. Everyone was looking at me. I became the key to the success or failure of this operation. Captain Zhang looked at me and said in a deep voice, Comrade Lin Yi, what do you think we should do? I stared at Chu Fan's photo on the screen, recalling what my acting teacher had taught me, and combined it with all the foolish actions of the villain in the original book. I took a deep breath and said, the cruelest way to humiliate a person is not to hit them or scold them. What is it? Everyone pricked up their ears. It's to attack the place he cares about most and feels most inferior about. I said, Chu Fan came from a humble background and only got to where he is today through his own hard work and a bit of luck. What he cares about most is his dignity. What he feels most inferior about is his origins. So, I paused, my gaze turning icy cold, and the corner of my mouth curled into a standard expression my acting teacher had taught me, 3 parts sneer, 7 parts aloofness. So, we're going to use the most elegant way, right in front of everyone, to take that pitiful bit of his self-esteem, stomp it firmly underfoot, and grind it into dust. After I finished speaking, the entire conference room fell into dead silence. All the experts looked at me as if I were some kind of monster. Only Captain Zhang nodded, a hint of approval appearing on his face. It seems your acting lessons weren't wasted. He said, at 7:30 p.m., luxury cars gathered in front of the Jindingshuan Hotel. I sat in a black Hongqi sedan, watching the well-dressed men and women outside the window, and took a deep breath. Don't be nervous. Sitting next to me was a woman in her 30s. Her name was Chen Shui, and she was the psychological counselor and temporary agent assigned to me by the higher-ups. I glanced back. In the back seat sat 2 burly men in black suits and earpieces. They were my security personnel, actually elite veterans from the special forces. In my pocket, there was a miniature communicator that allowed me to stay in constant contact with the command center, that is, Captain Zhang and his team. I felt like I wasn't going to a banquet. I was going on a special mission. 0. Please respond. Captain Zhang's voice came through the earpiece. Copy that. I replied in a low voice. Target Chu Fan entered the venue 5 minutes ago and is currently in the buffet area. He's wearing a rented suit and looks a bit uneasy. Matches our psychological profile. Good. Remember our plan. Plan A is the main approach, with Plan B as a backup. Your task is to stir up trouble. Leave the rest to the professionals. Understood. I adjusted my tie, pushed open the car door, and stepped out. The spotlight immediately turned on me. Lin Yi, the sole heir of the Lin Group, was already one of the focal points of this banquet. I ignored the reporters and walked straight into the venue. Inside the venue, the air was filled with the fragrance of perfume and the clinking of glasses. I spotted my target at once. Chu Fan was standing in a corner, holding a glass of champagne, looking somewhat at a loss. He was completely out of place with everything around him. I adjusted my demeanor, recalling the words of my acting coach, and strode toward him. My appearance immediately drew the attention of everyone around. They all knew me, and they all knew that my company and Chu Fans were competitors. This is going to be good. Those words were written on everyone's faces. I walked up to Chu Fan, looking down at him with a practiced, perfectly calibrated expression of contempt. Oh, isn't this President Xu of Qingyun Construction? I deliberately dragged out my tone. A place like this, do you really think you belong here? Chu Fan's face instantly flushed red. His hand gripping the wine glass turned pale at the knuckles from the force. Mr. Lin, please show some respect. He forced out through gritted teeth. Respect? I laughed exaggeratedly, as if I had heard the biggest joke in the world. Respect is earned through strength, not by renting an ill-fitting suit to fake it. Chu Fan, take a whiff of yourself, you reek of poverty, dirtying the air in here. That remark was too hurtful. The people around began whispering among themselves. The looks they gave Chu Fan were filled with sympathy and schadenfreude. Chu Fan's eyes were practically blazing with fury. I knew that my performance was already more than half successful. Lin Yi, he growled. Don't push me too far. So what if I do? I doubled down, reaching out a finger to poke his chest. And nobody like you, who only got where you are today because my dad took pity on your family back then, dares to yell at me. Do you believe me when I say I can make sure you can't make it in Shenxing with just one word? This was the final step of Plan A. Maximum pressure. Now it was Chu Fan's turn to fight back. According to the original plot, he would reach his breaking point, punch me to the ground, and then deliver a passionate speech about 30 years east, 30 years west, earning thunderous applause. However, just as Chu Fan's fist was about to strike, a sudden change occurred. Stop. A dignified voice rang out. The host of the banquet, the highly respected Chairman Wang, strode over with 2 security guards. He didn't even look at me, directly pointing at Chu Fan and angrily scolding. Whose child are you? How can you be so ill-mannered? At my banquet? You still want to start a fight? Security. Throw him out. Chu Fan was stunned. The people around were also stunned. Everyone could see that I was the one provoking, that it was my fault. But why was Chairman Wang only targeting Chu Fan? Only I know. Director Wang is one of us. Or rather, a collaborator who has been persuaded by Captain Zhang and his team. This is part of our plan. Deny the protagonist any chance to save face, using the power he knows best to crush him. This is the most thorough humiliation. 2 security guards grabbed Chu Fan, who hadn't yet reacted, and began to drag him out. Chu Fan struggled, looking at me with eyes full of humiliation, anger, and a deep, bone-deep hatred. Ding. Detected that the protagonist Chu Fan's hatred value toward the host has reached a critical point. Mission complete. Reward fighting skill, beginner, has been issued. The system's voice echoed in my mind. I watched as Chu Fan was dragged away, feeling no trace of satisfaction in my heart, only an indescribable sense of absurdity. A villain, with the help of the nation, bullied the protagonist. What kind of nonsense is this? After that night, Chu Fan completely hated me. I knew, because on the system panel, his hatred toward me had directly skyrocketed from the previous warning level to the danger level. The response team expressed great satisfaction with this. This proves our strategy is correct, Captain Zhang said during the review meeting. To deal with this kind of child of destiny, we can't play by the usual rules. Let him be strong if he wants. We'll just follow the procedure. I sat in the meeting room, feeling like a mismatched mascot. They discussed how to maximize the use of the system and how to complete tasks scientifically, while I only needed to step out and draw aggro when necessary. Soon, a new task arrived. Side quest. Sabotage Chu Fan's first commercial bid. Task requirement. Ensure the failure of the West City Park renovation project bid, which Chu Fan's team had spent 3 months preparing for. Task success. Reward mind reading, trial card, *1. Task failure. Randomly deprive 1 bodily function, e.g., sense of smell, touch, etc., for 1 month. This failure penalty was milder than the previous elimination, but it was still disgusting enough. The countermeasure team immediately took action. The documents for the West City Park renovation project were placed before me immediately. This is a municipal project, a lucrative opportunity for any company. Qingyun Construction Company, which is Chu Fan's company, has invested heavily in this project and is determined to win it. Making them lose the bid is simple. A business consultant said. The Lin Group is also participating in this bid. With the Lin Group's strength, as long as we present a standard proposal, Qingyun Company stands no chance. No, I immediately objected. Everyone looked at me. I explained. You don't understand the protagonist. If we win this easily, it's not sabotage, it's just normal business competition. Chu Fan would only feel unwilling, but he wouldn't hold a full grudge against me. The system's task requires sabotage. And that word carries weight. We have to make him feel like he could have won, but lost because of my underhanded tactics. Professor Lee nodded. That makes sense. What we need is subjective sabotage, not objective domination. We have to make the system determine that we've completed the task. Then what do? I thought for a moment and said, it's simple. Our Lin group will also present a flawed proposal this time. Then we'll find a way to let Chu Fan steal this flawed proposal of ours. A young staff officer's eyes lit up. I understand. Chu Fan thinks he's got our trump card, so he'll target our flaws to perfect his own proposal. But he doesn't know that our real killer move isn't even in the proposal. Exactly. I snapped my fingers. In this bidding, there's a key figure on the review panel, an old scholar who values cultural depth. Above all else, our proposal may seem full of holes on the surface, but its elaboration on cultural connotation is flawless. Chu Fan's newly established small company simply doesn't have that depth, even if they make their proposal perfect. In that old scholar's eyes, it'll just be a soulless shell. Brilliant. Professor Lee slapped his thigh. This is a dimensionality reduction strike. The skin of business competition. The core of cultural competition. Lin Yi, I never knew you had such a talent for being a villain. I gave a wry smile. This isn't talent, it's something forced out of necessity. What followed then entered the national procedure. An action team composed of top-tier hackers, corporate spies, and psychologists began devising a plan to casually let Chu Fan get his hands on our fake proposal. 2 days later, a cleaner at Chu Fan's company accidentally picked up a USB drive while taking out the trash. Inside the USB drive was our Floridan bidding proposal. Chu Fan treated it as if he had found a treasure. He and his team stayed up for several nights, studying our proposal inside and out, and then, brimming with confidence, they came up with what they believed to be the perfect final plan. On the day of the bidding meeting, I didn't even bother showing up. I am playing chess with psychological counselor Chen Shui at the base. At 4 in the afternoon, the news arrived. Xingyun Construction lost by a narrow margin. It is said that upon hearing the result, Chu Fan tore up the documents in his hands on the spot, his eyes bloodshot like an enraged lion. He couldn't understand why he still lost when his proposal clearly outshone the Lin Group in every aspect. Later, through connections, he found out that it was that old pedantic judge who vetoed his proposal with a single vote, citing the reason: too much craftsmanship, utterly devoid of soul. As for the Lin Group's proposal, although its technical parameters were not superior, its exposition on the inheritance and innovation of the city's historical context deeply moved him. Chu Fan understood immediately he had been played. He thought he had stumbled upon a treasure, but in reality, he had stepped into the trap I set for him. Ding. Side quest completed. Reward mind reading, trial card. *1 has been issued. The mission was completed. But I couldn't bring myself to feel happy. I asked Chen Shui, aren't we being a bit too unfair by playing like this? Chen Shui adjusted her glasses and said calmly, Comrade Lin Yi, you need to understand. Chu Fan is not our enemy. He is merely an objectively existing mission trigger. Our goal is not to defeat him, but to complete the system's tasks through him and secure benefits for the country. During this process, he may face some inconveniences, and when necessary, the organization will provide him with other forms of compensation. I was stunned. Compensation? Yes, Chen Shui said. For example, since he lost this bid, his company's cash flow will definitely be strained. We have already injected some funds into his company through a third-party channel, under the guise of venture capital. It's not a lot, but it's enough to help him weather the storm. My mouth fell open, and for a long moment, I couldn't speak. On one hand, they were screwing him over to the point of no return, and on the other, they were sending him money to keep him alive. That move was just too outrageous. I suddenly felt a bit sorry for Chu Fan. He might never understand, even to his dying day, what kind of opponent he was up against. The mind-reading trial card from the mission reward was in hand. I handed it over immediately. Professor Li and his team gathered around the object that looked like an ordinary game card, marveling at it as if Columbus had discovered a new continent. Its material cannot be analyzed, and its energy composition is beyond comprehension. A physicist said, "It's as if it appeared out of thin air, a substance not belonging to our dimension." "Comrade Lin Yi, can you use it now?" Professor Li asked. I tried to focus my mind and issued the use command to the card. The card instantly transformed into a streak of light and drilled into my forehead. A cool sensation spread through my mind. I felt my perception become unprecedentedly sharp. Ding. Mind reading trial card has been activated. Duration 24 hours. How is it? Professor Li asked nervously. I looked at him. The next second, a voice rang out directly in my mind. This young man is truly a national treasure. With him, our research on human potential can advance by at least 50 years. I wonder how his genetic sequence differs from that of ordinary people. I'll have to apply to draw a tube of his blood later. Me. I then looked at Captain Zhang beside me. This kid is getting more and more used to his role. Not bad. I just wonder about that Chu fan. How strong is his mental fortitude? I hope he doesn't get broken by us, or the system mission won't be able to continue. I'll have Xiao Chen keep a closer eye on his mental state. I silently averted my gaze. This mind-reading ability is a bit too intense. I know too much. How is it? Can you hear anything? Professor Li pressed. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to tell the truth. I roughly repeated what I had heard from their inner thoughts. The entire lab fell into an instant. Dead silence. Both Professor Li and Captain Zhang's faces turned a bit awkward. Professor Li cleared his throat twice, breaking the awkwardness. This ability has great research value. Tremendous value. Comrade Lin Yi, your task for the next 24 hours is to interact with as many people as possible and record every thought you hear. This is precious first-hand data. And so, I became a mobile mind-reading machine. I was taken to meet many people. There were researchers at the base, logistics support soldiers, and even 2 high-ranking leaders from headquarters. I heard a lot of things. There was the anxiety of researchers about the project, the longing of soldiers for their families, and the leaders' emphasis and expectations for this project. These heartfelt voices made me truly feel, for the first time, that I was not fighting alone. Behind me stood thousands upon thousands of real, tangible people. The 24 hours passed quickly. When the effect of mind-reading faded, I even felt a little disappointed. But my work has brought tremendous inspiration to Professor Li and his team. We've discovered a pattern, Professor Li said excitedly, holding a thick stack of reports. These skills, rewarded by the system, though seemingly mystical, may actually be a form of information technology we have yet to understand. He pointed at the data model on the big screen. Take mind reading. For example, it might not actually be listening to thoughts, but rather receiving and decoding the other person's brainwave signals. And that combat skill. From last time, we analyzed your movements with high-speed cameras and found that your muscle reaction speed and neural transmission efficiency improved significantly after acquiring the skill. It's more like a kind of underlying code optimization for your body. I was completely lost. Speak in plain English, I said. Plain English is... Professor Li's face flushed with excitement. The rewards the system gives you are not magic. They're technology. Super black technology far beyond our current level of understanding. Every single reward could open a door to a new world for us. The system's Bono. The system itself is a national treasure. Looking at his fervent expression, I suddenly understood. In my eyes, the system was a death warrant. But in the eyes of these scientists, the system is an inexhaustible treasure trove that can continuously provide future technology. Our relationship with the system has quietly shifted from confrontation to exploitation, and I am the only miner. Chu Fan is the toolman who provides the mining pickaxe. From then on, I no longer had any psychological burden when it came to doing evil. In fact, I even looked forward to it a little, because I knew that every time I bullied Chu Fan, it wasn't for myself, but for the country's scientific cause. I was being a jerk for the nation. How glorious! According to the original plot, what follows is a very classic face-slapping at a banquet scene. The daughter of the city's wealthiest man, one of the original novel's heroines, is hosting a birthday banquet. The villain, Lin Yi, will use money to humiliate the protagonist, Chu Fan, who is working as a waiter to earn tuition fees. Out of jealousy, then, Chu Fan will display astonishing talent in gambling on rough stones, cutting out a piece of imperial green jadeite on the spot, stunning everyone and thoroughly slapping Lin Yi in the face. When the system issued this task, everyone in the countermeasure team laughed. Freebie, comrades, Captain Zhang said. Stone gambling. Professor Li's eyes lit up even more. This is another great opportunity to study luck. We must record the entire process and collect all of Chu Fan's physiological data. And so, another scientific hunt targeting the protagonist began. First, my preparations. This time, I was no longer alone. Shan Shui accompanied me as my female companion. Her task was to observe the entire venue and provide me with real-time psychological profiling and social advice. The two bodyguards stayed close at all times. Their task was to prevent Chu Fan from actually making a move and, if necessary, to control the scene. A jewelry appraisal expert, disguised as my driver, is on standby outside at all times. The banquet is held at a private estate. By the time we arrived, it was already bustling inside. I spotted Chu Fan at once, dressed in a waiter's uniform. He was weaving through the crowd, carrying a tray. The moment his eyes met mine, they instantly turned as sharp as knives. I knew that his hatred for me had risen another notch. I didn't provoke him immediately. First, following Qin Shui's instructions, I chatted and laughed with several business tycoons, fully displaying the elegance and composure of a wealthy second-generation heir. Then, the banquet entered the entertainment segment, an on-site gambling on rough stones. Dozens of rough stones of varying sizes were pushed forward. I knew the protagonist's performance was about to begin. Chu Fan accidentally broke a plate and was scolded by the butler. According to the plot, he will be punished by having to move these rough stones. Then, during the process, he would discover the Stone King containing imperial green jade. Everything was just as written in the book. When Chu Fan moved an unremarkable, millstone-sized rough stone, his body trembled slightly. I knew that the golden finger within him had been triggered. The look in his eyes as he stared at that stone was filled with fervor. The time had come. I held a glass of red wine and strolled over slowly, positioning myself precisely between him and that stone. A waiter who doesn't do his job properly. Staring at a stone, what's the point? I said in that annoying tone of mine. What? You want to get rich overnight like everyone else? Take a piss and look in the mirror. See if you're worthy? Chu Fan's fist clenched again. The guests around us gathered once more, ready to watch the show. I'll take this stone, Chu Fan said, ignoring me and speaking directly to the master in charge of the stone gambling. You want it? I laughed exaggeratedly. Can you even afford it? The starting price for this stone is 500,000. Chu Fan's face flushed bright red. As a poor student, how could he possibly come up with 500,000? If you don't have the money, get lost and stop blocking the view here. I pulled a check straight out of my pocket and slapped it on the table. 1 million. This stone, I'm buying it, just for the thrill of it. Humiliation, or money. Simple, direct, effective. Chu Fan looked at me, the hatred in his eyes almost turning into something tangible. I knew that the first part of the system mission was already secured. Next came the protagonist's face-slapping moment. I would spend 1 million to buy a worthless stone. And Chu Fan, because of my stupidity, would get another chance to pick the Real King stone, then cut out imperial green jade in public, making me the laughingstock of the entire venue. However, How could the countermeasure team allow such a thing to happen? Just as I was about to make the payment. Wait. A resonant voice rang out. An elderly man dressed in Tang-style attire, with an immortal and ethereal bearing, walked in surrounded by a crowd. It's the Jade Saint. Master Gu. A burst of exclamations rose from the crowd. Master Gu, the top jewelry appraisal expert in the country, was a figure as elusive as a dragon, rarely seen from beginning to end. How'd he end up here? Of course I know. Because he was also invited by us. Master Gu walked straight up to the pile of rough stones, not even glancing at the one Chu Fan had chosen, and instead pointed directly at another stone, the size of a fist and covered in moss. He cupped his hands in a gesture of respect toward the host of the banquet and said in a clear voice, "Young friend, would you allow me to cut open this stone and take a look?" The owner naturally dared not refuse. The stone was cut open on the spot. Dazzling, imperial and domineering green instantly lit up everyone's eyes. Eminacia, Emperor Green. The whole venue erupted. Everyone surged forward like mad, while Chu Fan stood frozen in place, as if struck by lightning. He looked at the imperial green that should have been his, then at the Stone King he had identified in front of me, and his entire belief system began to crumble. How could this be? His golden finger had malfunctioned? No, his golden finger was not wrong. What was wrong was that this world no longer revolved around him alone. We, using more professional and scientific instruments, including ground-penetrating radar and composition analyzers, have long since scanned this batch of rough stones thoroughly. Which pieces contain jade and which are waste material are all crystal clear. The so-called rough stone gambling is nothing but a joke in the face of national-level technical exploration. I looked at the utterly dejected Chu Fan, elegantly swirled the red wine in my glass, and gave him a smile that was exclusively for the villain. No, do you still want this stone? At that moment, I felt that I was not the villain. I was the protagonist. After that day, Chu Fan shut himself off. According to the reports from the observer we placed by his side, he locked himself in his rented room for 3 whole days, refusing to eat or drink, repeatedly muttering, "Impossible. This isn't scientific." His worldview had suffered a devastating blow. A protagonist who relied on a cheat code suddenly found that his advantage was no longer working. This feeling was probably akin to a sharpshooter developing Parkinson's. The response team held an emergency meeting on this matter. Chu Fan's psychological state is on the verge of collapse. This is very unfavorable for our subsequent mission execution, said psychological expert Qin Shui with concern. A protagonist who has lost confidence is no longer a protagonist. The system may also change the mission mode as a result. Captain Zhang tapped the table. So, you're saying we broke him? That's one way to put it. Then find a way to make him better, Captain Zhang ordered. Give him a little sweetness to help him bounce back. We need a stable mission trigger. Thus, a series of psychological reconstruction plans targeting Chu Fan began. Through a third-party company, we offered him a small but lucrative contract. We arranged a coincidental opportunity for him to meet an industry big shot who greatly admired him, also one of our people. We even hired an actress to play a wealthy heiress secretly smitten with him, showering him with warmth every day. Under this series of combined moves, Chu Fan, the unkillable protagonist, finally reignited his fighting spirit. He felt that his previous failures were only temporary. Heaven was still on his side. Seeing him become dragon-proud and heaven-defying again, all of us breathed a sigh of relief. However, we were too quick to celebrate. We underestimated the system's error-correcting ability. A new mission arrived without any warning. And this time, the content of the mission left me and the entire countermeasure team feeling unprecedented difficulty. Special mission: kidnap the female lead, Su Wanqing. Task requirement: within 24 hours, imprison Su Wanqing in the abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city, and notify Chu Fan to come for a rescue. Task success. Reward: cross-era core energy technology. Task failure: the host will be randomly teleported to an altitude of 10,000 meters. After I finished stating the task details, the entire command center fell into a deathly silence. Kidnapping. This is no longer a minor act of mischief. It is a genuine, serious crime that violates criminal law. Moreover, the punishment for failure has escalated from the previous erasure and sensory deprivation to a free fall from 10,000 meters in the sky. This is forcing my hand. The system has realized that, within the rules, it can no longer outplay me and the nation, so it has started to act rogue. It is attempting to use this boundary-crossing mission to force me out of the nation's protection and back into that isolated, helpless, truly villainous role. This reward. Cross-era core energy technology. Professor Li's breathing grew heavy. He stared intently at the screen, his eyes bloodshot. If this is real, then its value is immeasurable. It could even change the global landscape. Everyone's gaze turned solemn. On one side, there is the nation's legal bottom line and my personal safety. On the other side, there is a temptation great enough to change the world. I opposed it. Captain Zhang was the first to speak, his tone resolute. Kidnapping is a serious crime. We must never knowingly break the law. Moreover, the risks of this mission are too high, and the consequences of failure are something we cannot bear. But that technology... Professor Li tried to argue further. No buts. Captain Zhang cut him off. No technology is worth sacrificing our comrades and principles. This mission... We abandon it. The atmosphere in the command center was suffocatingly tense. I sat in my chair, silent. I knew that Captain Zhang was right, but I also knew that I couldn't give up on this mission. Because, at the very end of the system's task release, there was a small line of text attached. A note. The penalty for failing this task is non-negotiable. In other words, even if I were locked up here and went nowhere, after 24 hours, I would be directly teleported to an altitude of 10,000 meters. This is a mandatory task. I die, or I break the law. The system, along with the country behind me, has pushed me into an impossible dilemma. I lift my head, looking at the arguing crowd, and slowly begin to speak. I'll take this mission. Everyone fell silent, looking at me. I said calmly, we don't have a choice. But we can play it differently. Play it how? Who says a kidnapping has to be real? I looked at Captain Zhang and said, word by word, we can have an open and honest talk with a female lead. Comrade Su Wanqing. Su Wanqing is the first female protagonist of this book. A typical rich and beautiful woman. Kind and innocent. She is the apple of the eye of Su Jinhua, the wealthiest man in the city. The difficulty of asking her to cooperate with us in staging a fake kidnapping is easy to imagine. Making her believe our identity is a huge challenge, said the leader of the action team. We cannot reveal the existence of the base, nor disclose any secrets about the system. Moreover, her safety must be guaranteed 100%, added Captain Zhang. Her father, Su Jinhua, has immense influence in both the business and political worlds. If she loses even a single strand of hair, we'll all be in deep trouble. The meeting went on late into the night. In the end, we finalized a bold plan. The next morning, on her way to work, Su Wanqing was politely stopped by a vehicle disguised as a municipal engineering truck. Several people in uniforms with serious expressions got out of the car. Leading them was psychologist Qin Shui. She presented an ID. It looked ordinary, just a standard special department work badge. But the serial number and embossed seal on it were linked to a top-level database that ordinary people could never access. Miss Su. Hello. We are from the National Security Special Incident Response Center. Chan Shui said in a tone that left no room for doubt. No, there is a top-secret mission related to national security that requires your cooperation. Please come with us. Although Su Wanqing was startled by the scene, her good upbringing kept her calm. She was taken to a safe, temporary stronghold. There, Captain Zhang and Qin Shui spent a full 2 hours telling her story. The version of the story had been meticulously refined by top-tier screenwriters and psychologists. The gist of it is, The country has discovered a latent terrorist with supernatural abilities. That is, me hiding within its borders. And this terrorist has set his sights on her, to lure him out and capture him in one fell swoop. We need her to cooperate with us and put on a show. After hearing this, Su Wanqing was completely stunned, but she had no choice but to believe it, because Captain Zhang and his team showed her some evidence. For example, surveillance footage of my previous misdeeds, specially processed, as well as some fabricated case files about supernatural crimes. In the end, under the grand banners of patriotism and national security, this kind-hearted, wealthy heiress, filled with a sacred sense of mission to serve the country, agreed to our plan. The plan officially began at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A piece of news shocked the entire city of Xinjiang. Su Wanqing, the daughter of the richest man, was kidnapped in the city center by unknown assailants. The Su family was in complete chaos. Su Jinhua mobilized all his connections, and the police also went through the motions of conducting a citywide manhunt. Meanwhile, Su Wanqing was sitting in the abandoned factory we had prepared for her, which was actually a carefully disguised safe house, sipping bubble tea while studying high school physics. Her tutor was the youngest physics PhD from Professor Li's team. Miss Su, you see, this law of conservation of energy can actually be applied to our current operation. That villain's superpower may seem to come out of nowhere, but we speculate that it must also follow some higher dimensional law of energy conversion. Su Wanqing was completely baffled. As the kidnapper gave her a call. The call was made to Chu Fan. Chu Fan, your woman is in my hands. I lowered my voice, using the tone of a kidnapper from the movies. If you want her to live, come alone to the abandoned factory on the west side of the city. Don't call the police, or you'll be waiting to collect her corpse. After saying that, I hung up the phone directly. Chu Fan, this hot-blooded protagonist, indeed did not call the police. Like an enraged bull, he drove his beat-up second-hand car alone and charged toward the west of the city. He had no idea that every move he made was under the surveillance of our hundreds of monitoring cameras and drones. He thought he was a lone hero, a knight setting out to rescue the princess. In reality, he was just an actor, heading toward the stage we had built for him. And around the stage sat a full audience, SWAT officers, doctors, scientists, and psychologists. Everything was in place, waiting only for the protagonist to take the stage. Ding. Mission. Kidnap the female lead Su Wanqing. Completed. Reward. Cross-era energy core technology. Issued. The system's notification rang in my mind just a minute before Chu Fan arrived at the factory. At that moment, thunderous cheers erupted in the command center. Professor Li was holding a monitor, laughing and crying like a madman. We did it. We actually did it. A chip-designed blueprint appeared on Professor Li's computer. It was a brand-new core energy technology based on cold fusion. Its energy conversion efficiency was over 100 times greater than existing technologies. This meant that controlled nuclear fusion, the ultimate energy dream that had eluded humanity for nearly a century, had finally been obtained today, through a fake kidnapping. Technology is the primary productive force. The system is the primary means of production. I watched the battered car speeding toward me on the screen, and a thought suddenly crossed my mind. We, it seems, are truly changing the world. When Chu Fan kicked open the factory door, this was the scene he saw. Su Wanqing was tied to a chair, with tape over her mouth, frantically blinking at him, tears of excitement glistening at the corners of her eyes, freshly applied eye drops. And I was sitting across from her, leisurely wiping a fake prop gun. Lin Yi, Chu Fan roared, his eyes bloodshot. Let her go. If you have a problem, take it out on me. I lifted my head and gave him a standard, twisted villain smile. Take it out on you. Who do you think you are? I said. I just want you to see how helpless the woman you love is in front of me. I want you to know that you can't protect anything. These lines were crafted for me by a psychologist, designed to maximize Chu Fan's anger and protective instincts. The effect was remarkable. Chu Fan charged at me like a wild beast. Then, He was easily kicked to the ground by me, a rich second generation who couldn't even tie a chicken. Just kidding. I am a man with fighting skills, beginner. My body has been optimized through the system's underlying code. Beating an ordinary person is as easy as child's play. Chu Fan lay on the ground, his face full of disbelief. He couldn't understand how this spoiled brat, who in his memory only knew how to indulge in pleasure, had suddenly become so capable of fighting. Just as I was about to step forward and deliver another kick to fulfill the system mission's hidden requirement, engaging in physical conflict with the protagonist. Freeze. Police. The factory gate was smashed open, and dozens of heavily armed SWAT officers stormed in with guns raised. Flashbangs, smoke grenades, tactical maneuvers, all executed seamlessly. Chu Fan, Su Wanqing, the hostage, and I were instantly subdued. Captain Zhang walked in imposingly, wearing a bulletproof vest. Without even glancing at me, he walked straight up to Chu Fan and said in a deep voice, "Mr. Chu Fan, thank you for your bravery. But next time, please trust the police. This kind of individual heroism of yours is extremely dangerous." Then, he waved his hand at me. Take him and the hostage back. Thus, under Chu Fan's bewildered gaze, I, the kidnapper, and Su Wanqing, the hostage, were rounded up by the police. This kidnapping case, which had shaken the entire city, was solved in less than 3 hours in a dramatic fashion. Lin Yi, was criminally detained for attempted kidnapping. Of course, it was fake. I just moved to a different place to continue my research life. And Chu Fan, because of his righteous act, became a hero in Shenzhen. Major media outlets were all reporting on his deeds. His company also gained great fame as a result. Su Wanqing, because of this shared hardship, also developed feelings for him. Everything was just like in the books. The protagonist once again saved the beauty and won her heart. Only Chu Fan himself felt that something was off. Why did the police arrive so quickly? Why had Lin Yi's skills suddenly become so impressive? Why was there, in Su Wanqing's gaze toward him, besides gratitude, also a hint of sympathy? He couldn't figure it out. At this moment, our research team had shifted the focus of their study from me to Chu Fan. Amazing. A sociologist exclaimed while looking at Chu Fan's data. Every time he encounters a crisis, he manages to turn it into good fortune. Every time he is suppressed by others, he gains even greater opportunities. If we were to describe this phenomenon in one word, it would be luck. Luck, or rather, protagonist aura. Professor Lee said, is it an objectively existing energy field, or a psychological suggestion that influences the subconscious of those around him? Or perhaps it is a form of probability manipulation from a higher dimension? Everyone fell into deep thought. This is a completely new field, one capable of founding an entire discipline, the scientific study of metaphysics. We must conduct more in-depth observation and research on him. Professor Lee concluded, I need his physiological data, including but not limited to blood, hair, and saliva. I want to analyze his genes and see what makes him different. That might be difficult, right? Captain Zhang hesitated. He's a hero now. We can't just forcibly bring him in to draw blood, can we? Then think of a way to make him voluntarily come. Professor Lee's eyes gleamed with the scientist's unique fervor for truth. A few days later, Chu Fan received a call from the city hospital, inviting him to give a heroic deeds report and, incidentally, undergo a comprehensive physical health checkup to demonstrate the government's care for heroes. Chu Fan, suspecting nothing, went happily. He didn't know that the pretty little nurse drawing his blood was the military district's top agent. The machine that performed the full-body CT scan on him was the latest bioscanner developed by the Academy of Sciences. With nanometer-level precision, he, the so-called child of fortune, had been thoroughly studied from the inside out without even knowing it. Chu Fan's blood samples and genetic map were soon placed on Professor Lee's desk. The research results surprised everyone. His genes are no different from those of an ordinary person. A genetics expert said, his tone filled with disappointment. His physiological data also falls entirely within the normal range. Another doctor added, in other words, from a scientific perspective, Chu Fan is just an ordinary, healthy young man. Doesn't that mean that so-called fortune doesn't even exist on a material level? Chen Shui proposed a viewpoint. Could it be something on an informational level? An information-based life form? Or mimetic contamination? Professor Li sank into deeper thought. Could it be that he himself isn't special, but rather the world's setting for him is what's special? This speculation sent a chill through everyone. If this world really were a book, then what would they themselves be? Just as the research hit a dead end, the system in my mind issued a mission once again, this time, the most insane one ever. Warning. Detected world line deviation exceeding 80%. Host behavior severely violates regulations. Initiating final error correction protocol. Ultimate mission. Rooftop showdown. Mission requirements. 3 days later, at noon, on the rooftop of Xinqing's tallest building, Skirich Tower. Engage in a life-or-death showdown with the protagonist. Chu Fan. Task objective. Be killed by Chu Fan's own hand in the duel. Task success. The system will extract all the spiritual energy from the host's moment of death to reset the timeline. The host's soul will be sent back to the original world. Task failure. The system will detonate its core energy, leveling everything within 100 kilometers to the ground. But this time, after I finished explaining the task, there was no cheering or excitement in the command center. Everyone's faces were etched with solemnity, sending Comrade Lin Yi to his death and dragging the entire city of Xinqing down with him. Captain Zhang slammed his fist heavily on the table. This damn system has gone mad. It hasn't gone mad, it's been cornered. Professor Li's face was paler than ever before. Our actions have completely shaken the very foundation of its existence. No, it wants to take us all down with it. 100 kilometers in radius, leveled to the ground. A staff officer drew a circle on the map, encompassing the entire city of Xinqing and several surrounding cities. This must be an immense amount of energy, at least equivalent to a nuclear bomb of several hundred kilotons. Panic began to spread through the command center. This was the first time they were facing a truly massive threat, one capable of destroying everything. The previous missions had all been mere skirmishes, but this time, it was the final, life-or-death showdown. Can we evacuate? Someone asked, trembling. 3 days to evacuate a super city with a population of over 20 million? Tell me how that's possible. Captain Zhang roared. The command center fell into dead silence once again. Everyone understood that they, along with the city's 20 million residents, had been strapped onto a chariot about to plunge off a cliff. The only break was me. Or rather, my death. I'll go. I spoke, my voice very calm. Everyone looked at me. I smiled and said, it's just dying once, isn't it? Anyway, the system said it can send me back to my original world. No matter how you look at it, I don't lose. Nonsense. Captain Zhang immediately objected. Your life is just as precious as any of ours. We will never abandon any comrade, but we have no other choice. I said, no, we do. A voice came from the doorway. An elderly man with graying hair, dressed in a Zhongshan suit, walked in, surrounded by a few people. Upon seeing him, Captain Zhang and Professor Li immediately stood up and saluted. Chief. The old man nodded and walked straight up to me. He patted me on the shoulder, his eyes full of approval and kindness. My child, you've worked hard, he said. The nation will not abandon you. The people will not abandon you either. Then, turning to everyone, he spoke in a firm and resolute voice. The system's rampage is a crisis, but even more so, an opportunity, an energy source capable of leveling an entire city. What if we could bring it under control? What if we could claim it as our own? The old man's words struck like a bolt of lightning, clearing the clouds from everyone's minds. Indeed, crisis. Crisis. Within danger lies opportunity. Such a massive energy source, if harnessed by the nation, would make that so-called core energy technology of the past pale in comparison. Everyone's expressions changed. Fear was replaced by a greater emotion called greed and excitement. Professor Lee trembled with excitement. Control it. Recruit it. My God, this is going to be incredible. Captain Zhang also snapped out of it. He looked at me, a renewed fighting spirit blazing in his eyes. Comrade Lin Yi, are you afraid? I straightened my back. Report to the chief. Report to the captain. I am afraid, but I trust the country and the party even more. Good. The old man slammed the table forcefully. Order. The antagonist project team is hereby upgraded to the Sky Capture. Project team effective immediately. Mobilize all available resources. At all costs, we are going to capture the sky. At that moment, I watched the figures in the command center, once again bustling and energized. Suddenly, I felt that this time, the system seemed to have provoked an entity it absolutely should not have. It wants to destroy the world. Sorry, but in our country, we specialize in infrastructure. Catching the sky. Indeed. The Catching the Sky plan is officially underway. The entire nation's war machine is spinning into high gear, centered around the rooftop showdown 3 days from now. Countless experts, scholars, and engineers from all over the country were urgently summoned to this underground base. The Sky Pillar Tower, the tallest building in Xinjiang, was completely sealed off overnight under the guise of a fire safety drill. A team composed of the most leading physicists and combat engineers quietly moved in. Their mission was to transform the rooftop of that tower into an energy absorption and conduction device capable of withstanding the system's energy burst, all within 3 days. In Professor Lee's words, it was installing a socket for the system. And my task is only one. Keep Chu Fan steady, ensuring that he will appear on that rooftop on time 3 days later. This, on the contrary, is the most difficult part, because we don't know what method the system uses to notify and guide Chu Fan. Sure, on the second day after the plan began, Chu Fan had disappeared. He didn't go to the company. His phone was turned off, and no one could find him. He must have been hidden by the system in some way, Captain Zhang said, staring at the surveillance footage with a furrowed brow. We have to find him. Professor Lee jumped up in a panic. If he doesn't show up, Lin Yi's mission can't be completed, and the system will detonate directly. The Skynet system, facial recognition, big data tracking, every available method has been employed. But Chu Fan has vanished without a trace, as if he had evaporated from the face of the earth. Only 24 hours remain. In the command center, the atmosphere is so oppressive it's suffocating. Just when everyone was at a loss, I suddenly spoke up. I might know where he is. Everyone looked at me. I pointed to a place on the map of Xinjiang, north of the city, Qingfeng Temple. I said, that's where his parents are buried together. In the original book, every time he faced a major decision, he would go there and stay. Why didn't you say so earlier? Captain Zhang shot me a glare. I just remembered it now. I rubbed my nose. Several drones immediately flew silently toward Qingfeng Temple. Sure enough, they found Chu Fan in front of a tombstone at the back of the hill. He had been sitting alone in front of the tombstone for a whole day and night. Captain Zhang looked at the footage transmitted by the drone and asked me, what now? Should we send someone to invite him over directly? I shook my head. No, I said. His emotions must be incredibly conflicted right now. The system has definitely assigned him the task of killing me. He's caught in an internal struggle. If we force our way in, it might backfire. Then what do you suggest? Let me go, I said. Let me go and talk to him. You're going alone. That's too dangerous. Captain Zhang immediately objected. Don't worry. You can deploy around the area. Besides, I smiled. I think it's time to let him know the truth. An hour later, I appeared at the back mountain of Qingfeng Temple. Chu Fan saw me and immediately stood up, his eyes filled with vigilance and murderous intent. Lin Yi. He squeezed out a few words through gritted teeth. What are you doing here? I came here to tell you something. I looked at him calmly, without a trace of hostility. I don't want to hear it. No, you do. I stepped closer to him, one step at a time. You want to know why you always manage to turn misfortune into good fortune? You want to know why your luck is always so ridiculously good? You want to know why I, like a fool, have opposed you time and time again in the most foolish ways? Chu Fan's body began to tremble slightly. Every word I said struck the deepest doubt in his heart. You? What exactly are you trying to say? I walked up to him and stood still. Then, right in front of him, I pulled something out from my chest. That is not a weapon, nor is it a magical artifact. It is a small red booklet stamped with a national emblem. I opened it and handed it to Chu Fan. Comrade Chu Fan, I said in an extremely solemn tone, word by word, I, Lin Yi, am affiliated with the Special Threat Response and Research Center of the 9th Bureau of the Ministry of State Security. My code name is Villain. Everything that happened before, including all the adventures and crises you experienced, was a form of behavioral intervention carried out by us to complete a top-secret mission. No, on behalf of the organization, I officially inform you, you, Chu Fan, due to your special constitution, have been listed as a special observation and protection target. Tomorrow at noon, on the rooftop of the Chintian building, the organization needs your cooperation to complete the final roundup operation. Here is your mission document. Please take a look. I stuffed a red-headed document stamped with the word top secret into his already stiff hand. Chu Fan, head lowered, looked at the red booklet and red-headed document in his hand, then raised his head to look at my utterly sincere face. His worldview, which had been shattered countless times by things like rebirth, system, and cheats, finally, at this moment, completely crumbled. The next day, noon, on the rooftop of the Sky Pillar building, the wind was strong. Chu Fan and I stood facing each other. Chu Fan's expression was still dazed. Even now, he hadn't fully recovered from the shock of yesterday's worldview reshaping. In his hand, he was still holding the mission statement I had given him. So, I'm not the protagonist? He asked me, his voice tinged with a hint of confusion. In a sense, you are, I replied. You are the core participant and key contributor of our entire plan. Once this mission is over, the organization will commend you. Maybe you'll even be awarded a first-class merit. Chu Fan, ding, detected that the host and the protagonist have arrived at the designated location. The final mission, Rooftop Showdown, has officially begun. Please, host, guide the protagonist to deliver the fatal blow to you. The system's voice echoed in my mind. Cold, merciless, as if reading out a death sentence. I looked up at the sky. The sky was very blue, very clear, in the high altitudes invisible to the naked eye. Dozens of satellites had already aimed their lenses at this place. Around the building, countless sensors and energy detectors had all been activated. In the underground fiber optic cables, terabytes of data are surging toward the command center every second. The entire nation's strength is focused on this small rooftop. Let's do it, I said to Chu Fan. Chu Fan looked at me, his expression complicated. I can't do it, he said, even though you were. But now I know. You? This is an order. Comrade Chu Fan. I interrupted him, my tone turning stern. Carrying out orders is your duty. Have you forgotten what was written in your mission brief? Chu Fan lowered his head and glanced at the document. It was written there clearly. Action Plan Article 3. At a critical moment. A controlled, non-lethal, but must be judged as fatal by the system attack must be carried out on Subject 0, Lin Yi. But how can I simple? I pulled a dagger from my chest and handed it to him. It was a specially made dagger. The blade was retractable, just like a prop used in movies. Right here. I pointed at my heart. Stab it in. Don't worry. I have protection. I won't die. Chu Fan trembled as he took the dagger. Come on. Don't forget. Tens of millions of lives are in our hands. I urged. Chu Fan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then suddenly opened them, his gaze turning resolute. For the country. For the people. He let out a roar, raised the fake dagger, and charged toward me. I spread my arms wide, striking a heroic martyr's pose. Just as the dagger was about to pierce my heart, a mutation occurred, an immensely vast and terrifying energy, one I had never felt before, erupted from within my body. It wasn't the system's elimination energy. It was the core of the system. It's going to self-destruct. It seems to have detected our plan. It's going to detonate early. Not good. Energy is out of control. It's 3 orders of magnitude higher than estimated. In the command center, Professor Li's roar came through the headphones, tinged with despair. The socket. Can't hold it. It's going to melt down. In that instant, my mind went completely blank. I felt my body being torn apart, vaporized. Death had never been so close. Yet, in the last second before I lost consciousness, I saw that Chu Fan, the protagonist we had always treated as a tool, made a move no one expected. He threw away the fake dagger in his hand and slammed into me with his own body. No, not a slam. It was a hug. He used his own body to hold me tightly. Who was about to explode. And then I saw it. A soft, golden light burst forth from his body. That light, like a warm cocoon, enveloped the two of us. The violent system energy that was about to destroy everything, upon contact with that layer of golden light, was quickly neutralized, absorbed, and pacified, as if it had met its nemesis. Warning: unknown high-dimensional energy interference detected. World line protection protocol. Activation failed. Core energy loss. 10%. 50%. 90%. System is crashing. The system's voice, intermittent and full of reluctance. Finally, it fell silent. Everything was over. The wind stopped. On the rooftop, Chu Fan and I were both still alive. I was completely unharmed. As for him, the layer of golden light on his body gradually faded away. I looked at him, and he looked at me. In each other's eyes, we both saw a glimmer of relief at having survived the ordeal. You? I began. What is that golden light on you? Chu Fan scratched his head, looking a bit embarrassed as he said, Oh, that, it seems. It's my system. Inside the command center. There's also a dead silence. Everyone saw that unbelievable scene through the surveillance footage. A full minute passed before Professor Li let out a scream, as if someone had grabbed him by the throat. A dual system host, and of different types. One villain system, one protagonist system. They actually triggered a mutual annihilation reaction. This is too valuable for research. Captain Zhang also snapped out of it. He picked up the walkie-talkie and, in a tone barely containing his extreme excitement, gave me a new order. Comrade Lin Yi, hold him steady. You must hold him steady. He's now a top-tier national treasure, more precious than you. I looked at the honest-faced chosen one before me, who had just saved the world, and felt a mix of emotions. After all this time, it turned out he wasn't without a golden finger. It's just that his golden finger, unlike my flashy and frivolous one, was a proper, positive energy protagonist system. What is your system? Like? I asked, trying to make my tone sound as friendly as a big brother next door. I don't know either. Chu Fan looked bewildered. It just showed up on its own during the lowest point of my life a while back. It's called the Striver system. It doesn't assign me tasks or threaten to kill me. Every time I work hard or do something good, it gives me a reward. For example, Last time I helped an old lady cross the street. It rewarded me with $100. After hearing that, I nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. My system forces me to do evil, threatens me with life and death, and rewards me with black tech. His system encourages kindness, helping an old lady cross the street, and rewards him with $100. Why is the gap between systems so huge? Then that golden light you just had. Oh, that, Chu Fan said, after I handed it over to the state. No, I mean, when I contributed it to save you, the system notified me. It said that was the Protagonist Halo Guardian mode, which can withstand one fatal attack and purify evil energy. Seems like a one-time skill. Listening to him, I felt more and more that this guy was truly a loyal and upright comrade. Too high a level of awareness. Just then, the door to the rooftop was pushed open. Captain Zhang and Professor Li, leading a large group of people, rushed over at a 100-meter sprint speed. They didn't even glance at me and directly charged toward Chu Fan, surrounding him. Comrade Chu Fan, you've worked hard. You have rendered great service to the country and the people. Captain Zhang tightly grasped Chu Fan's hand. Tu moved to speak. Child, how are you feeling? Is there any discomfort? Should we draw some blood to check? Professor Li asked with a concerned expression, pulling out a syringe. Chu Fan was a bit flustered by the whole scene. I was left aside, like a forgotten has-been internet celebrity. I felt a sour pang in my heart. So it turns out that Project Zero, have already become a thing of the past. No, Chu Fan, this Project One is their new favorite. But that's fine too. I touched my chest, and the lingering threat of death that had been entrenched there for so long was completely gone. The villain system in my mind had also fallen silent. Without a single sound, I am free. Looking at Chu Fan surrounded by the crowd, I suddenly remembered something. I stepped forward, squeezed in, and tapped him on the shoulder. Under everyone's puzzled gaze, I pulled a small booklet out of my pocket. The cover of the booklet bore several gilded characters. Handbook for Cooperation and Management of Special Talents in the New Era. I shoved it into Chu Fan's hands, flashing him an utterly sincere, heartfelt smile. Then I pointed at his head, then at the booklet, and in a tone as practiced as a recruiter's, I asked softly, Comrade, are you going to turn in your system? 2.